So today I'm with Marcelo Garcia Casil from the Maecenas project. Marcelo, welcome to the Cryptoverse. How are you doing today, mate?
Hi, Chris. Thanks for having me. I'm doing great.
Yeah, great to have you, sir. So we had a quick pre-interview chat there, and you had to tell me how to pronounce Maecenas because it's MAECENAS.co. That's the website, right?
That's right.
When I looked at it, I was like, oh, I'm going to have to ask him about that, right? So Maecenas it describes itself as the world's first blockchain platform that democratizes access to fine art. So can you explain how the fine art market works, how it works now, and then illustrate why this platform was necessary?
Sure. So the way the fine art market works in terms of participants being able to invest in art is very much very traditional and old school. So you primarily have three ways of investing in art. One is to just go into a gallery. You browse the gallery, go around, pick up a piece that you think provides good investment value, good long-term wealth protection, and you just pay you may negotiate down the price tag, but essentially you just pay the full price and own the whole piece yourself and have it delivered, and you have to keep it in storage yourself. Then the second, that approach attracts huge fees. So they say you invest 300,000 in a painting, nearly half of the amount will go to the owner of the gallery as a commission.
Pretty normal. Is that pretty normal?
It's very normal. Yeah,
and everyone accepts this
because the artists there's no better way of gain visibility and gain known.
Okay, so the art gallery has all the power as the middleman.
That's right, especially if you're not a well-known artist. So if you're trying to rise up in the ranks, galleries are the only way.
Very interesting.
To get to be known. Then the other approach, which is not very different from that, is to go to an auction house. So auction houses would typically deal in more expensive art pieces. And I think everyone understands how an auction works. And there's a suggested price for the item. There might be a reserve price, so the minimum that the seller is willing to accept. But then participants raise their hands and up the stakes, and the highest bid would take the piece. This typically requires physical presence. There's some innovative companies that somehow allow people to participate remotely, but this is a bit of a hack, if you will, which implies having a person physically being at the auction and taking messages through a tablet and kind of bidding on their behalf. But
right,
even
so act as a proxy in the room for the internet, right? I've actually seen this, yeah.
Yeah, so even though this sort of works, it's a hack and it doesn't solve the problem. The main issue with the auction house approach is the fees. Right. So as a buyer, you pay what the auction houses call the buyer's premium, and depending on the final price of the item, you as an investor you pay between 12 and 25% as a commission.
That's an auction house fee.
Yes, an auction house fee.
Wow.
That is charged just to the buyer. The seller also pays a fee. The fee is not disclosed. And is arranged on a discretionary basis, depending on the interest of the auction house in having the item. So if you're kind of like a Basquiat, a Monet, something that the auction house wants to sell because they need the publicity, they may charge anything from nothing to 10, 15%. But if you're just another regular item, it's not unusual to charge 40, 50, even 60%. It could happen.
So those auction houses are making some good money on both ends then?
That's right. And the reason for the high fees is not just I know that they basically run a monopoly, because if you look at the two largest auction houses, Christie's and Sotheby's, they have identical fee structure, identical. The fact that they run this duopoly or monopoly is one aspect of the fees being high, but the other aspect, and the primary aspect, is that hugely inefficient. The entire auction is processed manually, and as we all know, having to have a huge back office of people processing deals by hand using paper or rudimentary spreadsheets, increases cost. So again, as an investor, you even before you own the artwork, you're already down 20% on your investment. So it doesn't make it very attractive. And right. Again, you need to look after it. You have to store it in an appropriate, safe location, and so on. So you really need to be an expert in art before you can invest. So it's not ideal for the likes of you or me or anyone who has a bit of money and is keen on investing in a piece of art, because you really need to spend a lot of money to be able to have the asset stored in good condition.
Right. So what you were just saying there about the high fees, right? It doesn't sound like they're profiteering. It just sounds like the business model is just expensive, with all the manual processes and stuff like this. Maybe there is a bit of profiteering because there's a monopoly going on, but at the same time, there's not a lot of technology involved by the sounds of it. It's a bit of a legacy industry, and that's why it's expensive to run, right? Absolutely,
and you have to understand that the auction houses, they have been around for more than 300 years, right? And they, in these 3 centuries, they really haven't changed the business model much. Other industries, in particular finance, capital markets, they have evolved, and they went from from companies investing in companies being completely liquid to having the stock markets. Then the stock markets had trading floors. They were phased out. Electronic trading came in. Then algorithmic trading with artificial intelligence. So there's been an evolution, even though the financial companies are criticized for not being very quick in taking technology innovation. They have evolved. Auction houses, they haven't at all. I think the biggest innovation over the last, say, 50 years has been to increase the size of the TV displays where they show the bids. That's been
that's about the biggest innovation, yeah. Right? Okay, it's interesting because that's one of the criticisms of the financial system. And Andreas Antonopoulos criticizes Visa for the only major inventions over the last several decades are ATMs or maybe tap to pay, which is for 60 years of innovation, that's not a lot to show for it. And I'd say that because, again, in the art world, by the sounds of things, because there's a lack of competition, there's no real incentive to innovate.
That's right. That's exactly what's happening. And then so I mentioned the main 2 ways. There's a third way in which you can participate in investing in art, and that's to do away with the auction houses, do away with the sort of the physical approach, and to buy shares in what's called an art fund. So an art fund is essentially an expert collector would identify a list of artworks that are maybe being priced slightly below the market value, and this person would sort of estimate how much money they need to acquire this collection. And raise money from investors to purchase it, and then the collector would sit on it for 5 to 10 years, and then time the selling of each of the artworks to make a profit. That's the pitch, right? This sounds like a much better approach because your investment is fully managed. There's someone who really understands the market, a real expert who can identify a bargain and sell it for a profit. The issue is that the minimum ticket size to participate in that fund it tends to be $500,000. So no, if you don't have the luxury of being able to invest that amount of money, then you're out.
It's interesting. That's kind of like the accredited investor thing, because
That's right.
I'd never heard of an art fund before, but it's just like any financial instrument that is traded as a fund. It's a basket of assets, and typically it's real estate or precious metals or stocks or whatever. But there's no reason why you can't do it with art. I've just never thought of it like that.
Yeah, they're not very common because of the high barrier of entry and the appetite. I mean, if you subscribe to an art fund, your money is locked in for 5 to 10 years, which is not, it may not be acceptable for many investors, right? I mean, in the current climate where the dynamics of the market change so quickly, having such a liquid investment for a long time could be very risky, and it is very risky. So there's no real easy, convenient way for people to invest in art. So with Maecenas, we really want to fix that, and when we say that we democratize access to investing in fine art, what we mean is that we open up this market from a really small niche circle of people who are very wealthy or have the right connections to be able to participate in deals, to virtually everyone who has an internet connection and a computer and a bit of money to invest. And this bit of money could be as low as a few thousand. So if you have enough money to participate in cryptocurrencies, then you should be able to participate in fine art. That's our view, and that's what we're trying to achieve.
Okay, brilliant. So you did a real good job there of describing like the problems in the existing market that you're aiming to solve. And I actually just learned quite a lot there. You talked about investing in art as kind of like for wealth protection. So you can use art as a store of wealth. Now, I recognize that as a strategy that very wealthy people use and have used for decades. But I suppose I'd never personally thought of doing that myself just because it seemed inaccessible, right? But now you're talking about it could become accessible to pretty much anybody.
That's right. And when you're talking about wealth protection, that's definitely the case for well-established artists and the most well-known masterpieces. They certainly offer very good protection over time. But there's also the opportunity to invest in emerging artists, contemporary artists who may be starting to get more popular and rise in number of exhibitions. Maybe they're starting to have access to bigger stages, and I know there's a lot of people within the art market who like to invest not just because they want to protect their wealth, but also because they truly are passionate about art. And there's nothing worse than being truly passionate about something and not being able to participate. So we also want to bring all these enthusiasts and who are the true community, the true participants in the art market are the artists, the people who love and appreciate art, who go to exhibitions, go to galleries and events, but most of them they are underserved. They can see it from the outside, but they can't touch it. They can't do anything with it.
Okay, so that makes me think like this is so similar to how the existing like stock market works, because straight away I'm thinking, okay, what about artists that are essentially startups, right? Unknown artists that may be the next artist to explode in popularity. And how about investing in that talent when it's undervalued, right? That's what we're talking about, isn't it?
That's right. That's exactly right. I mean, that's a very good analogy. Like, the IBMs and the Microsoft would be the well-established artists, but then you have the startups who are the rising stars, the contemporary artists, and they may be very good investment, and you may be able to enjoy an exponential growth if they do well.
And what's one of the biggest challenges for artists, whether it's music artists or fine artists, is getting discovered, right? Actually making a living out of the thing you're passionate about. So if that's something that Maecenas is going to help these startup artists to do, then I'm in support of that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I know we started the conversation by explaining how galleries work and why artists accept these huge fees, which could be in the 40 to 50%, and the main reason is it's a sales channel, and Maecenas as a global online platform offers that sales channel and allows artists to be seen and to be visible directly worldwide by anyone who is looking for the next kind of unicorn, if we use the startup terminology.
And it's funny, it's this classic dilemma of an artist, kind of being an artist and being a world-class salesperson. They're not very similar as skills, and that's, I suppose, what artists have struggled with. Is if you're a fantastic artist, the ability to sell your art is a very different skill. And I would say that's probably why they were quite willing to accept, say, a 50% fee, because 50% of a sale is better than just art that is sat in your attic doing nothing.
That's right. That's a very well-known problem. That's why most artists, they have a manager negotiating deals on their behalf. Because at the end of the day, they want to be able to focus on what they like, which right. is creating art. They don't want to have to deal with numbers and contracts and so on. And galleries take advantage of that because sure. there's no better alternative.
Gotcha. So can you describe how each of these use cases work for the user? I had a look on the site, and you've got these 4 sort of use cases: the gallery, the family office, the investor, and the collector. Can you run us through those scenarios and how this platform would apply?
Sure. So I'll start with what we call the sales side. So I mean, Maecenas is a marketplace, so we have 2 very different participants. You have on the sales side the parties that are looking to raise money to get funding to maybe divest into other asset classes, or mm-hmm. to reinvest into the same asset class. And then you have on the buy side the investors, right? So there's actually more use cases than the ones we listed on the site, but the most common ones are, and I'm going to take the liberty of using one that's not on the website. So for the sales side, one emerging use case that we've seen over the last month, and there's been actually a news published recently, it's about museums. Majority of them, they seem to be struggling to stay cash positive. Most of them, they can't charge an entrance fee that's high enough to cover the costs, mm-hmm. and they have huge multi-million-dollar assets which are illiquid, which are the artworks that are being shown, yes. that they can't monetize. So mm-hmm. it's they may be sitting on $100 to $200 million worth of artworks that are not driving any income, and they are hugely liquid. And these museums, they have running costs, and what happens is they typically are forced to sell part of the exhibit just to get cash to keep the lights going.
Well, which is a bit of a downward spiral, right? Because as they start selling their fine art, fewer people want to come, right? And then eventually exactly. you end up with an empty museum.
Yeah, and the whole purpose of art is that is shown and allows people to come anytime and appreciate it and enjoy it. So if you remove it from the museum, then the art is lost. Exactly. Effectively. So one strong use case that Maecenas offers for museums is to be able to sell a percentage of the ownership of each artwork. So say 20 to 30, 40% through the platform, very much like how a company goes public on the stock market and sells percentage of the shares to investors. And they can use that cash to maybe acquire new pieces or simply just keep the business going without having to remove the artwork from display, mm-hmm. which is also great for the investor because they are investing in an artwork that has a very well-known a designated physical location that it can be enjoyed. And if you're passionate about it, you can tell your friends and family, hey, I own 2% of this painting, this sculpture that's in this museum, such and such. So it's a great experience.
And that helps the art piece to keep its value, right? Because say if several years passed and the artist was forgotten about, it's kind of funny how art is subjectively valued. So if a particular artist kind of died out in memory, well then perhaps their art would then, the value of their art would die out with it. Is that, you know what I'm saying with that? So
that's right.
By the exposure, that keeps the value, because everyone knows it's desirable and so on. It keeps the momentum going.
Yeah, in a way, just the fact that the artwork is listed on an art exchange like Maecenas makes it visible and alive, because there's trades going on. There's buy and sell pressure, so it's clearly like a shopping window,
right?
Online shopping window for artworks. The other use case, and this is also very common, and we validated this very strongly in our research, is with art collectors. Private collectors, they face a similar problem. They don't necessarily have the artworks on display. They typically have them in safe storage, but they're sitting on millions of dollars worth of assets, which are highly liquid. And the reason they're highly liquid is because it's very hard to find a buyer that wants exactly your artwork at the time you want to sell it and for the price that you expect to be paid. So it's like for Microsoft to have to find a buyer willing to acquire the entire company. That's very, very difficult to find for Microsoft.
That's a very interesting way of putting it. Yeah, it's almost like that's how fine art is working right now. The entire ownership of the company or the art piece moves from one person to another, and 100% of the ownership is moving, one step at a time, where now you're talking about, just like with a company, breaking the fractional ownership down to however much you want, really. Exactly.
So it's very easy for anyone to be able to find a buyer for maybe a few $100s worth of Apple shares, IBM shares, and in the case of the artworks, it doesn't work like that, because no one's really taken the effort to introduce this innovation that was introduced for companies a few decades ago. So for these collectors, having the opportunity to sell a percentage of the artworks makes their collection, their investment, much more liquid, much more appealing, easier to price, and they can use this extra cash to expand the same collection, cover the cost of maybe having to do restorations on the artworks, relocation into different regions. Maybe they want to bring some of the artworks on display, and that has a cost. The insurance premium may increase, and they can cover all those costs using cash that's raised through the platform. So they solve the problem of not having access to liquidity, which at present what they do is they simply borrow money. They get a loan, and those loans are not cheap. Typically, they pay between 15 and 40%.
Is that some kind of special art loan?
Yeah, so it's an art loan, and most banks don't want to touch it unless the individual is a billionaire, typically, because they have to provide personal guarantees. So if you are not the average collector, maybe a well-established collector, but your wealth is a moderate 200 to 300 million, you would struggle to get a good interest rate for your loan.
Okay, got you. Cool.
Yeah, so that's the same use cases of securing financing also apply to galleries. So I'm not going to go into too much detail on that. I think it's self-explanatory. Then the other use cases, strong use cases, are on the buy side. So for investors, one very common scenario is that you have family offices, which are small companies that manage investments for traditionally wealthy families. That's where the the family office name comes from. And what the administrators of the wealth have to do is they basically take a mandate, which is an instruction from the wealthy families in terms of the risk profile, the markets that they want to invest in, and how they want to diversify the wealth. So this typically could be as simple as I want to have 30% of the wealth allocated to real estate, 10% to art, 60% to stocks in developed economies. So to execute this mandate, the fund manager, the family office manager, they typically go into the capital markets. Right? They would go and choose suitable stocks, suitable real estate funds or properties. But then they need to come down to executing this 10% of the wealth allocation to art, and they are left with the options that we explored at the beginning of the discussion, which is you go to the gallery and you buy a few paintings outright, or you participate in an art auction. And this is very expensive. It's not easy to readjust the allocation. So typically every quarter or every few months, you would need to revalue the portfolio and make sure that this 10, 30, 60% allocation is still in place. If say the stocks went down and the originally 60% is now down to 50, then you would need to go and buy more stocks or sell some of the real estate and art. And if you're sitting on 3 artworks which combined are worth 5 million, and you need to increase your position by 200,000, then you're out of luck, right? Because your mandate was to invest in masterpieces, blue chip artists, and there's nothing you can buy for $200,000. Right. So for the investor that's managing funds on behalf of wealthy families, Maecenas solves the issue of being able to size your position exactly to the dollar that you want to invest, as opposed to having to just buy whatever is there available at the time and pay the price. And there's no artworks are not commodities, so all artworks are different and they have different prices, and therefore that aspect makes them very hard to be compatible with portfolios. So Maecenas makes fine art compatible with portfolio strategies and with the what is called the portfolio rebalancing aspect that the investment managers have to do on a regular basis.
Yeah, I was going to say the platform's going to be very useful for other investment platforms to plug into and integrate with, because then they can largely automate that portfolio allocation strategy you just talked about. I bet there's a horrible moment when the fund manager or the investment manager, financial advisor, it comes time to allocating their clients' money into fine art, and they go, oh no, now I've got to go through this manual process of going to the auction house or whatever, when all the other financial instruments were just a click away, whereas now the fine art is going to be a click away.
That's right. And it's funny that you say that, because I was having a meeting 2 weeks ago with an asset management firm, and I was actually talking to one of the founders, and she said they were about to roll out a robo-advisor tool, and they one of the issues they had is they couldn't offer fine art to their clients, and their clients were typically family offices investing in art, and she was very excited about Maecenas, and she said, I can't wait for you guys to go live. We want to list in our robo-advisor all the paintings and sculptures that you list on your platform.
Absolutely. So let's move on. That's a good point to segue into talking about the technology. So what technology have you built Maecenas on, and what stage is the project at?
Right, so there's 2 sides to the technology on Maecenas. One side is a more traditional centralized system, which in our case is a front end using JavaScript, just typically a web front end and a nice UI that's actually in alpha is fully functional, and we've recorded a few videos that are posted on our blog that demonstrate the UI. We personally think is quite neat and sleek, but I'll let the audience have an opinion. Behind that, there's a transactional system that is built around what is called the microservices architecture. So it's essentially, instead of having a monolithic backend, you break down your backend into a bunch of 10, 15 different services that each perform a very unique function. And this is very scalable architecture that lets you upgrade and improve your system without having to do a full rewrite. So that's a more traditional kind of centralized type of system, which is half of the technology. The other half is within sort of the blockchain space, and that revolves around how we use blockchain as a record-keeping system for provenance. So all the documentation that is submitted to the platform by the art owners to validate the authenticity of the artwork, the fact that it has a proper insurance in place, is stored in a safe location, it's never been lost or stolen, blah, blah. Those documents are hashed, and they are timestamped in a blockchain to guarantee to all investors that the platform is not messing with the documentation, that it's impossible for anyone either outside of the company or inside to tamper with the records. And obviously the second thing we use blockchain for is to create the digital certificates, the shares for the artworks. So this process is commonly called tokenization. So because you turn an asset into tokens that you can buy and sell, and those are already built, and it's also in alpha, and it's available for anyone who wants to request a demo. We do screen sharing sessions and show them end to end how the process works. Then we have an expansion to that, which we are starting to build, which is a series of smart contracts that we are running on the Ethereum network. And these contracts, they encapsulate a part of the sensitive processes that the platform runs. Probably the most important one is the Dutch auction aspect of the platform, which is the process whereby investors submit bids. They state how many shares they want to buy and the price they're willing to pay. And instead of running this process in a centralized way that offers no transparency, no visibility to investors, and that will require auditing for us to prove that we're being honest, instead of doing that, we're moving this process into a fully public, open, decentralized platform like Ethereum, where investors can see the source code of defining the rules of the Dutch auction upfront. They can know for a fact how this is going to work. They can know for a fact that no one is messing or manipulating the data. That there's no secret investor that has some privileges that no one can see. This is fully fair, and all investors have exactly the same chances of participating. So we strongly believe that this is a very important part of the platform. If you're saying that we're democratizing access to invest in art, we want that democratization to be completely fair and transparent, and give everyone equal chance to participate. And the best way to achieve it is by leveraging Ethereum network, which is the most advanced smart contract platform today.
Okay, gotcha. So I'm stuck on something, which is these pieces of artwork are often in the custody of third parties, right? That's a good thing. We just talked about earlier on, because if it's in a museum, they have security and all that sort of stuff. So that's a good thing. But I'm thinking, like, what stops someone switching out for a fake when you're not looking? Or more specifically than that, if we're talking about authenticating the artworks, so when you tokenize it, The people buying the tokenized version of a painting, they need the confidence that it does represent a share in the real, authentic painting. So the question is, how do you create a cryptographic proof that the art is authentic unless you map the piece of art down to the atomic level?
Right. So that's a very good question, and the proving with 100% accuracy that an item is authentic is a challenge that hasn't been solved yet, and it's definitely relevant to the art market. The way this is currently solved, and Maecenas in particular, is not necessarily improving this process or innovating the way it works. It is by relying on experts. So the way the industry works is that depending on the artist, the works created by this artist, they will be part of catalogs that experts, typically art historians, they put together and they validate and they get consensus by the community that the artworks are legitimate, that it's true that they were produced by this artist. For contemporary artists, this is not a problem because they are alive, but for old masters and Michelangelo's and Da Vinci's, it's a problem because it's not official catalog describing every single artwork created by these guys. So every time you go to an auction house and they tell you this is Picasso being auctioned, that Picasso would be part of a catalog, and there will be an expert. In the case of Picasso, it would be an art historian with specialized in Spanish art, and probably someone who works for a museum. So it would be a curator, and these experts, they are highly regarded, they are highly reputable, and they can't afford to lie because the entire careers go down.
Sure.
So it's not a scientific process. I'm afraid it's highly subjective and qualitative, and it still relies on individuals. The way we improve this is by avoiding having to repeat this process every time the artwork is transacted. So in auction houses or galleries, every time as a buyer you go and shop around and decide that you want to purchase something, you are exposing yourself to the risk of buying a fake, which unfortunately happens way too often. There's some estimates that indicate that maybe nearly half of the artworks being traded are not originals, which is a scary figure. So by using Maecenas, you know that the provenance checks were done at some point. You have cryptographic evidence of the documentation that was produced. You know that it has a certain insurance in place. So after the insurer issued the policy, even if it's a fake, you know that it's covered, that it has a cash value that covers the artwork. So at the end of the day, what you're buying is the premium of the insurance as an investor, because physically you won't own it. What you own is a percentage of an artwork, which is a dollar value, and that artwork is protected by an insurance policy. So even if it turns out to be a fake, which is it wouldn't be good news for anyone, you're still covered and you get your money back.
Okay, so that's cool. So Maecenas exists. That sounds like a bigger problem in the art world at large, and Maecenas exists within that. So it's a larger problem that the whole industry needs to solve eventually. But I suppose what you just said there is Maecenas is taking it a step closer to getting full confidence that these pieces are authentic by taking that expert validation and then putting that on the platform. That's right.
By staking the hashes of each documentation produced, when we validate the artworks, we sort of freeze in time the documents so that investors know down the line that they were produced at a specific date, and they can validate that the the PDF they have on the screen matches exactly the document that was used by the platform when we accepted the artwork.
Okay, gotcha. So there's what service is Maecenas providing that you can charge fees for and actually make a business out of it?
Right. So we have a very simple fee structure. We charge a flat fee based on the settled amount for every transaction that is completed through the platform. So for as a buyer you pay 2%, and as a seller you pay 6%. The reason you pay a higher fee as a seller is because that fee that you pay includes all the checks and all the costs that are associated with validating the authenticity of the artwork. Sometimes you're not listing just a single artwork. You may be listing a collection. So we may have to check multiple items. So the 6% fee covers all of that, which may, in most cases, requires having to physically send the person to location to inspect the artwork, make sure that it's stored exactly where you claim it's stored, maybe even liaise with the insurance provider and the storage facility manager and so on. So these fees, which maybe for other type of investments, they may seem average or slightly expensive. For the art world, they can be up to 10 times cheaper than what you currently pay using auction houses or galleries.
Absolutely. Such is the way with these blockchain-based systems, right?
Exactly.
It surprises me that, it doesn't surprise me, because we talked about the legacy in the art world and how they've had it pretty good for a long time, having very good margins for being that middleman in the art industry, and they've been largely protected from these kinds of changes. But eventually the whole blockchain technology thing, no one's going to remain untouched by that technology, and it sounds like the art world is next.
That's what we think, and that's why we're so excited about what we're doing, because we think we really I don't like the word disruption so much, because it sounds like you're destroying something.
Sure.
But
transformation.
Yeah, we completely making the industry leapfrog 3-4 generation now innovations in terms of technology, and we're bringing that into finance into a first-class citizen that's as advanced as the other asset classes, commodities, stocks, and so on. So I think it's time, and it's fair, and I think it's going to be exciting for everyone to be able to say, hey, I just purchased $5,000 worth of this money or this basket, right. And that's it brings art closer to everyone.
So are you personally a lover of art, or were you attracted more to this as a business opportunity?
I actually have a background in financial technology. I know, or I used to know about art as much as the next person. I was initially attracted by the state of the market. The moment I learned about the huge inefficiencies, the monopolies, and all this old-fashioned way of transacting, I was completely shocked. And I like fixing things and improving things, and I was immediately drawn into this, and I tried to figure out a way to improve it. My thought was, there has to be a better way. Why is this still the case? And understanding technology, understanding the way investment works, capital markets works, the problem seemed quite shocking to me, and the solution was, in a way, pretty obvious. We're taking inspiration from other existing asset classes to build what Maecenas is. So I started a journey of learning about the art industry. We recruited an art expert into the team, who is now our chief art officer, and he's been instrumental in teaching absolutely everyone in the team about all the nuances of the art industry. Certain things are not the way you would think they are. There's particularities about how participants expect certain transactions to happen and so on. So it's absolutely critical that you understand how the industry works before you can present solutions. So I've been learning loads and loads, and I'm still learning about art. I'm not an expert by any means. Eventually I may become one. But I started to enjoy art more and pay more attention to artists the moment I started building Maecenas. So it's been a very exciting journey over 3 years now, and hopefully a journey that will last many more years.
Absolutely. So you're bringing mainly the financial technology and innovation expertise and that sort of thing, and then you've got a reasonably decent team. Looking at your website here, you've got a good 15 or so people on the team, plus the co-founders. So decent sized team there. Yes,
absolutely. And we are located all around the world. It's very, strategically speaking, it's very convenient, but also it's a challenge to manage the time zones. I have part of a team in Singapore, in Geneva, in London, and in Buenos Aires. And in fact, I'm just back from Buenos Aires from a trip, and I'm flying to Geneva this Saturday. So there's no chance for me to have any rest.
Absolutely. Well, you're in that startup mode, bringing this blockchain technology to the world. So I hope you're enjoying the process. Are you
Absolutely.
Process? Yeah, good.
I am. Yeah.
All right, guys. So is there anything else you want to talk about before we close?
I think I have to thank you for the very thorough and well thought interview. I think your questions have been spot on. I don't have anything else that I would add.
Okay, great stuff. So if the listeners are interested in more in the project, you can go to maecenas.co, maecenas.co, or you can go to twitter.com/MaecenasArt or facebook.com/MaecenasArt. So until next time, I'll thank Marcelo for being my guest today. Thank you very much, Marcelo, for being on the Cryptoverse.
Thanks, Chris.